Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Gravedigger, Symbol of Eternity, out August 26 on Rock of Angels Records. The album has 13 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 21st full-length studio album. They are a German heavy metal band. Now, this is an album that offers a classic design to the genre and classic design to the band. You have a record that starts off with an intro, it has a ballad nearly the middle, followed by an interlude, so you have this finishing of side A, starting of side B, and this is the overall picture that the album offers. A picture that works really well if you're listening to it on vinyl. You definitely want to have that sense of a side A and a side B and have the tracks that define those two sides be there for you. And at the same time, if you're listening to it on a digital format, considering that they have 13 songs in 50 minutes, you need a little bit of a break. The ballad, the interlude work as a break, allowing you to feel a little bit better about the overall journey that this album puts you through. 13 songs, 50 minutes, it feels a little bit too long, a little bit too overstretched. I wanted this album to be a little bit more condensed, to be a little bit shorter, to be a little bit more precise, a little bit more to the point. Sometimes less is more. Now, as far as side A and side B, they're very equal to one another. The same nuances, the same flows, the same mechanisms are present on both sides. So the album is very balanced from that overall perspective. There are a few ripples, there are a few changes, but it's not a super dynamic album. It's a more linear record all around. From this overall design, the only thing I really didn't like was the intro. It didn't fit the rest of the album, or at least it didn't fit Battle Cry, which is a song that comes right after. When I think of an intro for a record, I think about a song that's gonna let me press play, get into that intro, and then seamless move into the next song in the overall experience of the album. This track feels like it's a little bit in a bubble. It doesn't really match the dynamic, it doesn't really match the sound, it doesn't match the experience that the next track gives, and it just feels a little bit out of place. It's there as a placeholder, it's an intro, but it doesn't do more than just that. It's a forgotten track at the end of the day, because when you're going to listen to this record, specifically if you're listening in a digital format, you don't really feel like you need it in order to engage the overall experience, in order to feel connected with the album. So I like intros on records when they meet the goal of connecting with the rest of the album, when they become the introduction to what the album is going to be all about. It's not the case, at least not to me, it's not the case on this record. Now, this album is a themed-driven album. The theme is the Crusaders, a theme that they've talked about before in Knights of the Cross, so nothing new to the band. I like the fact that they're great storytellers and they're able to go into different parts of history and become a little bit of the narrator of what's happening within that time period. This album is a little bit like that, and it works really well for the band, and it allows you to feel like you're immersing yourself into the overall theme, into the stories, into each and every single song, and the characters and the tales that they're telling you. It's a very important part of this band, and it's something you're going to find on this record. I don't think it's going to surprise anybody on how good they are as far as telling that story. The theme, once again, it's been talked about before, but now you're looking at it from different angles, from different perspectives. Once you get into the sound, this album feels a little bit too bassy. And what I mean by that is that it has too much bass. And it doesn't have too much bass in terms of the bass popping in with a bass line here and there, or allowing the bass to really create certain dynamics that create movement or that allow you to feel connected to it, song in and song out. That's not what I'm talking. What I'm talking about is the overall sound experience, the overall soundscape of this album sounds like it has too much bass in it. This takes a little bit of the definition away from all the other elements, from the drums, from the guitars, and from the bass itself. It just feels like it's drowning out everything together. It's putting a little bit of a damper on it, a blanket over it. And I think for a record like this, a record that has great drum sound, that has great guitars, great riffs, great energy, it needed to be a little bit better defined. You want those drums to come through, you want the bass to come through at the right time, and you definitely want the guitars to be the igniters of everything that is happening. You want them to be the starting point of everything. And when you have this much bass in the overall sound, it's really hard to see the forest from the trees, because everything starts to blend with one another. Everything becomes one. Now, this creates volume. This makes the record sound bigger, but bigger is not always better. I rather have an album that's perhaps a little bit lighter, but a little bit better defined, so I can understand exactly what's pushing the songs forward, what's igniting the experience, song in and song out. So I'm not a huge fan of the production on this record. I think it takes a little bit of the steam away from the actual quality of the drum sound and the guitar sound and execution. And let me go into the guitars, because I like the guitars on this record. I like the style, I like the sound, I like how driven they are, how heavy they sound, how powerful they are, how much intensity they have. Once again, they just needed to be better defined. But once you go over that aspect, once you glaze over that aspect, and you pull the veil and you look at all the guitar work, solos, leads, everything, the guitars are phenomenal on this album. They really have a little bit of extra kick, a little bit of extra power, perhaps more power, more kick than what we saw in the previous record. This feels like a more guitar-centric album. They allow the guitars to have more of a role, to have more of a predominant role almost over everything else. And it could have been even more than what it currently is. But the guitar execution, the way they came together, the power that they offer, really interesting for an album like this. The drums also have power, they also have strength, but you don't notice them as much because of the overall sound experience kind of hides them a little bit. The same thing could be said for the bass. When the bass pops in, you feel it, because now the album that already has a lot of bass in it, it has even more bass in it. So it almost becomes noticeable, but not for the right reasons. This is a record that has a lot of great attributes, but it could have sounded better. It could have been better defined. It could have been better created in order for the listener to feel connected with this intense, heavy, driven, powerful experience across almost every single song. Now, from a vocal point of view, I like the vocals because they're always coming across as that narrator, as that storyteller that just says what it needs to be said in the right tone. Chris has great voice, great vocals, a little bit of raspiness, a little bit of an old aroma to it that matches perfectly with the stories that he's telling you, with the characters that are coming across in those stories. It almost brings those characters and stories to life just by his tonality, just by his delivery. On the vocal side, I also enjoyed the backing vocals, the layers that they use specifically in the chorus in order to create a little bit more pump and circumstance. It makes the chorus bigger, it makes the chorus feel brighter, it gives them more energy, it brings a little bit of epicness into that chorus, and therefore it injects that epicness into the overall songs. So the vocal performance on this record is on point from start to finish. Overall, the band is not reinventing the wheel. I was not expecting them after 20 records, this is their 21st, to start going in a different direction or start reinventing the wheel. This is Gravedigger through and through. If you're a fan of the band, if you're a fan of their previous 20 albums, this one is going to hit the mark. You're going to be a fan of this one as well. Nothing new here. There's nothing really recreated for this record. It's just a Gravedigger album. It's just a heavy metal album through and through, from the first to the last song, with great guitar riffs, with great melodies, impactful solos, great song construction, and then those vocals that make the choruses really pop. This album has very hooky and catchy choruses all around. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Battle Cry. This is the opening track, technically. I mean, outside of the intro, this is the opening track. And it's a song that's packed with intensity. This is a battle cry. This song comes across as a battle hymn. It feels that way in the sound, in the vocals, in the overall construction, in the overall approach. It has great power from drums and guitars working together. It just moves you from the first minute all the way to the last. It's a song that never really pauses, never really slows down, regardless if you're in the verses or chorus. The same sort of dynamic, the same sort of movement, it exists, it is there. The only difference is that the chorus is definitely the climax of the track. Super, super, super hooky. I don't think you can have a battle hymn without a hooky chorus, and this song is definitely a battle hymn, and it definitely has a hooky chorus. I just love the overall heaviness, drive, and power that the song has musically, and then the vocals are just the icing on the cake. Next, you have Heart of a Warrior, another ripping track, very similar to Battle Cry in terms of the construction, in terms of the linear motion that it has, in terms of how it moves from verses to chorus, how the chorus is slightly more impactful, more bombastic. most of it coming from the vocal performance, using those backing vocals to create a little bit more volume, to create a little bit more of a difference between those two worlds, allowing you to gravitate towards that chorus a little bit more. But all around, the guitars on this track dominate the sonic experience of the song. In Battle Cry, you have the drums and guitars working together, almost seamless as one, in order to create this sense of movement, this sense of approaching a battle, if you will. On this one, Heart of a Warrior is a little bit different. The drums and guitars are a little bit more separated from one another, and the song becomes a lot more guitar dependent, a lot more guitar driven, and it works well for the dynamic that the track has. You're able to use a very similar construction between these two songs, but by changing this dynamic, the two tracks feel very different from one another. Last but not least, Sky of Swords, a more methodic song at times. It's not a slow song, it's definitely not a ballad, but it doesn't have the same intensity, it doesn't have the same attributes as Battle Cry and Heart of a Warrior. This song is a little bit more methodic in how it moves, but what it loses in speed, what it loses in momentum, it gains a little bit more in heaviness, in thickness, and definitely in volume. I like the fact that it's a track that has great guitars once again. I mean, that's a staple throughout the entire album. The vocal layers on the chorus once again coming through. This also becomes a staple throughout the entire record, and this song is no different. It's a song that has, it's heavy, but it doesn't have intensity, but it still has a great movement. It still inserts little jolts of energy here and there, but it are jolts that are really seamless in terms of how they're inserted, so it doesn't really change the dynamic of the track. It doesn't make you feel like the track is broken or that the track has incredible ebbs and flows. No, the track always feels like it's moving at the same speed, even though sometimes it's moving slightly faster than what it was before. Interesting song from that perspective, from that construction, from that approach. Once again, using a very similar structure, changing a few things here and there, allowing the song to feel completely different from everything else that is around it. This is it. Gravedigger, Symbol of Eternity, out August 26th on Rock of Angels Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.